Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Facebook Live. My name is Audrey Hudson. I'm the Associate Curator of Schools and Early Childhood Programs at the Art Gallery of Ontario. Today, we are going to launch an artist spotlight and teacher resource on Ruth Cuthand's Don't Breathe, Don't Drink. First, I will start with a land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge that we are on the land of the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This land was also home of the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and the Wendat. This meeting place is home to many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit from all across Turtle Island and has been since time immemorial. So I want to take a moment to introduce the panel here. We've got Wanda Nanabush, the Curator of Indigenous Art at the Art Gallery of Ontario, and we have Ruth Cuthand, artist of Don't Breathe, Don't Drink. So this is, as I said, it is a launch of our teacher resource and artist spotlight on Ruth Cuthand, and we are lucky enough to have her join us today. This resource is around the suggested grade level for grades 7 to 12. Curriculum links include visual arts, science, and geography. Great. So I'm going to share, I will share the artwork so you can see. Okay. Sorry. All right, so here's the artwork as it is situated in the Art Gallery of Ontario. And I'll just go over a couple of, here's a detail, and we will definitely dive into the work with the artist and curator. And there's a detail again, and we'll discuss this more.
Okay.
Okay, great. So Wanda, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Audrey. I want to say hi, Ruth, and it's an honor that you're here with us today. And I also wanted to congratulate you on your Governor General, your Gigi Award. That was really exciting. I thought maybe we could start with beadwork in general and think about, you know, a lot of people think of it as traditional or craft or things like that, and you've really changed, I think, the way that beadwork is conceived, and you know a lot of the history of where those beads come from. Maybe you can talk a bit about that and its relationship to your practice.
Okay. I was asked to teach a class at First Nations University of Canada on the Saskatoon campus where I live, and I wanted to teach beadwork in a different way rather than craft, because craft, if you think of like power outfits and you think of how they have a design and then they repeat it and repeat it, I wanted to teach it in a way where they would be engaged with the beads and making decisions throughout the beading. So I actually started them beading paintings. And so Norvell Morceau was very popular. Kind of the black outline, and it's all very flat. And they had to make decisions about matching the beads to the color, because beads don't actually match to the colors of paintings. And then they had to decide how, like, could they put all the beads they wanted in there? Did they have to put less? And so they were constantly engaged trying to figure out how to do it. And I was really surprised at the end of that process. They were all so proud of their work. And they went and got it framed, which is like really unheard of. Yeah. And then I started thinking about, because I was teaching it and I was starting to really love beads and the colors and the finishes, and I was trying to figure out what to do. So I was looking at beads that came one afternoon because I ordered them from the internet. And I was holding them up and looking at the colors, and I thought, wow, you know, beads they're a trade item. They're not like indigenous. We can't go out and collect them in the wild. So So I started thinking of trade and the upside of trade, which is like, you know, iron pots and knives and those kinds of things that revolutionized our world. And then I started thinking of the downside, which really is disease that came from the old world to the new world. And that's when I thought of work by Robert Hoole. He had a billboard here in Saskatoon, and he did a smallpox virus, a microscopic view of it. And I remember looking at that, and it was all gray. And I thought, you know, I've seen, sorry, I've seen some microscopic views that are colored. And so, sorry, I went and Googled the diseases that came, and they were colorized by somebody called a medical artist. Sorry, and I thought, these are, they're so beautiful, they're so abstract, that I really, really visually think that if they were beaded, they would be gorgeous. And so I actually started beading viruses, and the first series was called the Trading Series. And it was an amazing experience for me because curators started to come to my door. Like, we hadn't finished it and they were buying it. It was like, this never happened to me. I'm my own best collector. Like, so that was a revelation of the response to the work.
Yeah, amazing. I think what always surprises me and about the work we're also talking about today, Don't Breathe, Don't Drink, where you have beaded pathogens inside these glasses, is that they're quite beautiful. You know, the colors are very seductive. They're very beautiful. What is that like, to put something so kind of dangerous and not nice inside something so beautiful? What was that in your mind?
Well, I like, my work is, it's political, I guess. And sometimes it's just very raw, and sometimes, like, beads are beautiful and they're very seductive. And so when people look at the beads, they're like, those are gorgeous. And then they slowly realize that it's a pathogen, and then they realize that it's actually a very dangerous thing. And I like that push-pull, because I think it keeps people interested.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you were able to suspend the beadwork inside these glasses? Because it looks like water, which is, you know, yeah. I know that you're thinking about the 94 First Nation communities that don't have access to clean drinking water. And these are some of the pathogens that you find in dirty water.
Yeah.
But here you have them suspended. And how is that?
Well, 5 years before I actually completed the work, I'd been thinking about it, and I had been thinking about how I wanted to suspend the pathogens. And so I talked to a friend and fellow artist that I sometimes work with, Cindy Baker, and I said, I have this idea. How would somebody do that? And she said, oh, you need resin. And I was like, oh, because I've never worked with resin, but she has. And so we started this process of figuring out how to suspend them. And it is a really long process, because you take a glass, and we had to pressurize it. So I was working at the University of Lethbridge, and we were putting glasses on plasticine so they would tip but not fall. And so they'd be like this, and then we would pour resin in. So we pour resin in, put it in the pressurizer for 4 hours, take it out, see if the surface was still tacky, and then we would put the beaded pathogen in there. Then we would put it back in the pressurizer for another 6 hours. Then we would pull it out, make sure there was no bubbles, all this kind of stuff, and then we would stand the glass up. So then you have the resin is at an angle, and then you just fill the glass up with the resin, and then you put it in for about 12 hours.
Wow.
It was it was frustrating.
For each one.
Yeah, we could do, I think we could do 10 glasses, but sometimes you get air bubbles. Sometimes there's kind of a split between the two levels of the resin. And it also, the resin is very sensitive to temperature. So I was having a show at DC3, and Cindy and I had worked for 4 days straight to get, I think we had 46 glasses we were going to take up to Edmonton, and it was in the spring. So we loaded everything into the car at night just so we could get from Lethbridge to Edmonton. We were driving along the next morning, and we kept hearing this weird sound. It would go ping.
Oh no.
And yeah, exactly. We stopped the car, we opened the back, and these glasses the glass was starting to expand, but the resin wasn't. So what happens is the glass shatters.
Oh no. And does that come from the temperature shifts, I guess?
Yeah.
Wow.
So by the time we got to Edmonton, I think we had 6. I just about cried. We have had so many troubles with that resin. But I'm glad you own it and you can worry about it now.
Yeah, I know. We do. Thinking about the materials, you have an amazing mix of materials and the way that you think through the process. I wondered if you could talk a bit about the tarp, because it's on this table and there's a tarp, and maybe we could go to the next image where you can see the beadwork on the tarp.
I've never seen a shot like that. They look like little tiny cookies.
I wasn't thinking that, but yes, they kind of do. Oreo cookie.
The mold, yeah, little mini Oreo.
Yeah. Well, I was watching CBC News, and they were talking about Attawapiskat calling in the Red Cross for their housing crisis. And I remember watching it, and they were building temporary shelters out of tarps. They were like little houses, but they were all made out of tarps. And that I'm a really image-based person. Like, I'll see an image and it'll just stick with me. And so I thought about that, and I thought about, housing is totally inadequate on reserve. And I thought about black mold, and when they remodel a house and there's black mold, people come in with these suits and respirators, and they block off the room, and everything goes into plastic bags, and it's got to be properly disposed of. But there's a lot of Indigenous homes on reserve that they're just covered with black mold. And well, you got to boil the water so you can drink it, so you have more moisture in the house, and it's a never-ending cycle. So I looked up black mold, and I looked up the stalks, because I knew I wanted to do a tablecloth, and I wanted it to be decorative. And I often think of those where they do bouquets of flowers around the sides of tablecloths. And so I thought, that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to do the stalk of the black mold and then the spores coming off it. And I got a grant a Canada Council grant to actually do the tarp. And I thought that I could do it in 10 months, but it actually ended up taking 2 years. Every one of those little circles is 15 minutes. If you want to figure out how much time I put into that, count all those little circles. I think there's 220 some in one stalk. And then I did, the stalks are actually clear beads, and I used a black thread to go through the beads, so it wouldn't just be white on white. There's a little bit of black in there.
Mm.
Yeah, and then I had it sewn together to make, it's like, it's the size of a banquet table, you know, those cheap banquet tables they have that are very narrow. Yeah, and then, so I had the tablecloth, and then I wanted the glasses. And what I did for the glasses, I went to secondhand stores and garage sales, because I really like that look of objects that are used. So there's scratches on them, and I wanted it to kind of represent a family or a community. So everything is mismatched and scratched, and it's like this object that we know. And then I wanted to put baby bottles in there, because I wanted to remind people that there are babies who are drinking contaminated water.
Yeah. And just thinking about like our, you know, these are homes, you know, it's like where we love our children, where we raise our kids. And this is kind of the extent of how much we're appreciated by the society, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I really wanted to present the inequality of Indigenous people in Canada visually. And I actually showed this at the Toronto Art Fair. And I couldn't believe the response to it. It was really incredible. So I knew that I had somehow through art reached people about something that's very important to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you followed the story further? Because you know how our prime minister said, oh, we're gonna, you know, get rid of this problem, which he hasn't. But
you know, they get rid of one and then another one pops up. It's just like this never-ending thing. But they really need to come up with a water purification that can work in areas where there's no access to getting it fixed. You know, I think that's one of the problems, is every government comes in and they tender water treatment plants, and then, you know, some crony has a water treatment plant that he'll do for cheap, and then they do that, and then it breaks down, but that guy's company is shut down, and you know, so we need something really basic that will do the job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And can I just say that, you know, Ruth, you talked about reaching a wide audience with your work. And I will say, like, this teacher resource that we've created, an artist spotlight, it is geared towards grades 7 to 12, but we tour grades K to 12. So the small, like, you know, kindergarten come in and they see the work, and they understand, like they pick something up, and then we have conversation. We gather around your work, like we sit, you know, sometimes 30 children around your work, discussing what is happening here, and we're real with them, and they take it, and you can see once, you know, they look at the specimen, they look at the fine detail of beading, and then the wow, like that, just that pause that they actually take to understand that people don't have clean drinking water. Yeah. So thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I had a person that I know from Saskatoon was at the AGO, and he stopped and listened to one of the guides talk about my work, because he wanted to make sure he knew what he was talking about, and he did.
Great. We're doing our job.
That's really
good. Yeah, we work hard. We work really hard so that our guides are trained and they are doing the work justice, and speaking truth to the work. So thank you.
I was
thinking,
thinking,
do you have one more question?
The technology that you use, because, you know, I don't know what these pathogens look like when they're under a microscope. I'm just curious about that. And you have a new series too, where you're taking the MRI scans of mental illness in the brain.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could talk about how your use of these technologies and what inspiration that is.
Yeah. Well, I'm very interested in Indigenous health, and one thing that I've noticed is that we need a big push into mental health, and we need to recognize that people need help and that people need medications. So we have really high numbers of diabetics, and we take medication for it, we take insulin, we do those kinds of things. But yet when it comes to mental health, there really is no understanding of brain and chemicals and why people need to take medication. It's off, and this is probably, when people have cancer, they'll say, oh, don't do white man's medicine, go see a medicine person. But we need to use medications that will benefit us. I mean, you can still do cancer treatments and see a medicine person. You can combine them both. And I really want to bring a spotlight to mental health because, well, first of all, in my family, we have bipolar and we also have depression. And if it wasn't for medication, I don't know where my daughter would be. My daughter, I'm very proud of her because she's on medication and she's doing really well with her life. She's really taken control, and she's still creative. You can take medication and be creative. It's not gonna stop you. And so that's why I'm doing the brains and the MRIs. And what I'm doing is I source some beads that glow under a black light.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so you have these little brains, and the parts of the brain that light up are beaded in different colors, and then under a black light, those will glow. And the beads that aren't glow in the dark, they just recede, so then you can see the dark areas of the brain that aren't functioning. And I'm going to have a show at the galleries at the University of Saskatchewan in January. And the curator is going to block off an area and have black light. And so people will see it. I can hardly wait. I'm so excited.
And I heard you beaded the coronavirus.
Oh, I beaded the coronavirus. As my daughter says, I've monetized the epidemic. This is coronavirus that I'm working on. I'm actually doing 4, and so I have 2 that are finished, and I'm trying to finish these before the end of June because I don't bead in the summer. So there's kind of a deadline for me. And then I've also been doing disposable medical masks, and I put 2 round coronaviruses on either side of the mask. And I think those were in Canadian art.
Yeah.
A while ago. Yeah. So I've been busy.
We should check in with our audience and see if there are any questions.
Okay. No, I think we are. Nope, we're good.
Too afraid.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So if we have any anything else, Ruth, I have a question. What do you hope? And we've heard a little bit about this already, but like, what do you hope our our young audiences take from your work? Like, what is the hope there?
I hope for young Indigenous beaders that they just bead whatever they want and just love it. I was at a beading symposium in Winnipeg in November, and it was fantastic. I met the young woman who does Bead This in Your Style, and just hanging out with all these beaders was like, it was wonderful. And for a non-Indigenous audience, I think that people, like when you think of Indians, like I'm an Indian woman that beads. And so people always say, oh, do you make moccasins? Do you make, gloves? And I'm like, no. And so I kind of want that whole idea that there are so many possibilities in beading, not just the you know, the moccasins and that kind of thing, but I just open it totally up and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. There's a real renaissance in beading right now. It's
Oh yeah,
amazing, this younger generation that's coming up.
yeah, yeah,
They're doing anything and everything with it.
exactly. Yeah.
But you paved the way, so.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to say thank you. Wanda, do you have anything, any last comments?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for jumping on this lunchtime call with us, and thanks so much for allowing us to have your work and to continually engage. Our relationship will be longstanding.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ruth, for sharing sharing your insight and your knowledge. We have a lot, and this is going to be this is a special moment for that. You know, you can come in. You're actually going to go into people's homes. You are in classrooms, virtual classrooms right now. So it's so special to have an artist share their work and to encourage us to think deeper about national problems, global problems, and regeneration and resilience. You know, and so thank you for taking that time with us today.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye bye, all.